Good evening. This is Tuesday, December 12th, 2023, meeting of the Town of Berlin Planning Board. As a preliminary matter, please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some of the attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. The ugly band t-shirt you decided to wear tonight, or anything you intend to or not screen share on your computer. Anything that you broadcast will be captured and recorded forever and ever and will wind up as a TikTok video to be shared amongst your neighbors and friends. This is Tom Sanford, Chair of the Planning Board. Permit me to confirm that the members of the Planning Board are present and can hear me prior to me calling the meeting to order. Planning Board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jay Teach.
Aye.
Timothy Wheeler.
Aye.
Carolyn McDonald.
Aye.
Thomas Andrew.
Aye.
Tom Sanford. With a quorum of the board present, I call this meeting to order at 7:36 p.m. Tuesday, December 12th, 2023. This is an open meeting of the planning board being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. Specific information and general guidelines for the remote participation by members of the public can be found on the Town of Berlin website. The governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location and encourages us to participate remotely. For this meeting, the planning board is convening using the Zoom platform as posted on the agenda, which includes links for the general public to join this meeting. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they've concluded their remarks, I'll invite each board member by name to provide any comment, questions, penetrating insight, and/or motions. Please hold all your insights until your name is called. Board members and speakers on the agenda, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Speak clearly to ensure accurate minutes are recorded. For any response, please wait till you're yielded the floor and state your name before speaking. If board members wish to engage in conversation with one another, please do so through me to avoid multiple conversations at the same time. Lastly, please note that each vote in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Thank you all for your understanding and cooperation. Now, on with the show. I will entertain a motion at this time to accept the minutes of our last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any corrections to be noted? Seeing none,
Yes.
I'll ask you to
Yes.
vote.
Yes. Yes. It seemed like one of the numbers for the apartments was exaggerated. It was 200 to 2,150 or something like that. I thought we should.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too.
I
What's
missed that.
the right number? Was there an extra digit or something? I wasn't even paying attention, but I saw it. Oh yeah, 2150.
Yeah,
What do you
that'd be
think
a
the
lot.
right? That would be a lot. What do you think the right number was? Do you remember?
250.
Oh,
I think
okay.
we just added a 1.
All right, got it. It is so changed.
Yeah, 2150. Wow, that would.
That would we
I-
definitely
that's
need
a
a
lot
new
of
school
apartments.
then.
It'd be a tough town meeting, wouldn't
All 2,000 registered voters would show up.
it? Yep. Congratulations, Eloise.
Yeah. She'd hunt us all down, I think.
Okay, so with the amendment that is made to our meeting minutes, I will ask you to vote to accept them. Carolyn McDonald,
Aye.
Timothy Wheeler,
Aye.
Thomas Andrew,
Aye.
Jay Teach,
Aye.
Tom Sanford, aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Is there any other mail or bills or anything that we need to address?
Well, I sent you a bunch of stuff. One thing that Eloise wanted to remind us of is that our over 55 definition, I think in the bylaw we had sent to town meeting last year and ended up for a complicated reason, never getting adopted, so we need to present it in the warrant again in May.
So,
Right,
so that was in 2019.
19.
When the warrant, the posting of the warrant was flawed, and as a result, the articles that we voted on at that annual town meeting had to be, there was a request to the legislature to allow us to go ahead and recognize those as being legitimate. At the next town meeting in 2020, a number of articles that were on that warrant, 4 out of those 5 got included and voted, but 1 did not. Article 35. And the Attorney General in the letter said, pending the outcome of the legislature's action to allow the town to accept these articles as valid, evidently. But there's never been an act by the legislature to do that. So this is the piece of the over 55 that allows someone under 18 to live in a unit all year round. So as Jay's saying, we just need to throw it back on the warrant, I guess, and include it for
And we
Yeah,
have to
I mean,
do
yeah.
that so that those units can be considered counted in the affordable unit count.
right.
Right.
I think we should still ask Meg to see if there's something that can be done ahead of time too, because although I don't know, I mean, they're going into recess probably, right? I mean, when do they get back together? Who knows? Anyway, we'll throw that on the warrant.
Okay. I want to make sure that Carolyn read this about how we're going to be the only town around that doesn't have LED signs. Because Clinton's putting theirs in.
Good, good. That's an even,
competition for who's got the brightest and most colorful.
that's an even
It'd be
better
a
reason
black
to not.
hole around Berlin, and
That's-
everybody else around us would be like this big, huge concert
Right,
venue.
right. And all the birds will come and live in Berlin.
Right. It is interesting that the Clinton Savings Bank has had a digital sign in front of the bank for a long, long time. So I don't know what this change would imply, because there are digital changing
Oh, is that right?
electronic signs in Clinton at a lot of places already. So
I think they specified 3 locations.
3 locations, yeah. So
Yeah.
it must be something very special.
There's
Hmm.
giant billboard signs.
Yeah.
Jay,
With
can
the
you,
copy
do you
around.
have that in digital form? Is that the Clinton
I sent it to you.
language? Oh, did you?
Yeah, PDF, send it to us
Today?
this afternoon.
That's why I didn't see it.
And then there was an appeal of the car wash that was denied. Sent you that.
I've already seen that.
And yeah, that's kind of
And then Tom, when
financial
you're,
stuff I'm going to give to Tom because he's good at it.
Say that again?
Bunch of financial stuff I'm going to give to you because you're good at it.
Another financial stuff?
A bunch of
I already turned the stuff in for our
for the budget.
budget, yeah.
Well, I got a whole thick stack of paper for you to do it again.
Oh, great.
There's also a set of drawings for a duplex, but I think that's going to the ZBA, and I think a renewal of the variance that Jeff Curtis has. In-law apartment, we got all sorts of great stuff, but I don't think any of it's necessary for the meeting tonight.
Okay. Well, give me the financial stuff on Friday, on Thursday.
We'll do, yep. It's your instructions for the coming year, I think.
Susanna Roberts has her hand up in the audience.
Okay.
Sue?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I have a quick one just because you were talking about the warrant. Lynn can't be here tonight, so I have an email from her that says, if you have a chance to mention this issue at their meeting, it would be helpful. In bylaw section 1233.1, it states that 10 hard copies of of the site plan are required by the zoning board. We actually require 15. So that's just a correction that needs to be made.
Wow.
So you get to reprint all those.
You guys need to buy some computers. What section was it, Susanna?
1233.1.
Oh, 3.1. Oh, I see it.
Yeah.
I promised Eloise I would give her all the little stuff that I find over the years.
That's something that we have to put a warrant together for, or is that something we just can correct ourselves and vote on it?
She was explaining that to me, but I wasn't paying enough attention, I think.
Oh, and now Eloise has her hand up.
I'm going to mute myself, guys. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, Susanna.
When this has come up at town clerk meetings, the Attorney General said we don't have any permission to touch anything. So if Jay can show me an error, I have to go back to the warrant, then the public hearing, and then what was actually voted at town meeting. But if I can demonstrate to the Attorney General that it was a typo on my behalf, then maybe I could sway them, but usually they say no.
Hmm. Okay,
I'd be surprised if this has ever been voted as 15. So,
No, see, the problem is in the ZBA paperwork, they want 15 copies. But when people come and present them to me, they show me the zoning bylaw where it says 10.
right,
And I say, well, I can accept it as 10, but then you're antagonizing the Board of Appeals.
right.
Yep.
So take
Alright.
your pick.
Yeah.
We'll correct it. All
So
right,
we
let's
can-
let's set this aside and let's get
Yeah.
going because we have our CMRPC presentation. So
Okay.
let's hear from them. Are the members available?
So Victoria and Emily,
I
would
would
be
think
my
so.
guess.
Yep.
And Jay, you're out of focus for some reason. I think you've been drinking again.
Yeah, I agree. It was.
Sometimes, right, if you get close, there you go. That seems to always do it.
Much better.
Hello.
Hello, how are
Yeah.
you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good,
Good
thank you.
evening.
Perfect. Is it okay I share my screen?
Sure.
All right, perfect.
Hold on. Emily, is that an active sweater or is that an animal that's draped over your shoulder?
This is a cat that also wanted to be promoted to panelist. As soon as I got on, he hopped right up. So sorry for the distraction.
Yeah, it's why I had my video off, so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get the other half of the sweater. Okay.
Oh, perfect. So thank you for having us, you guys. My name is Victoria Chavez, and I work with CMRPC along with Emily. And today we really want to discuss with you is cottage housing communities. So we're introducing a new zoning bylaw. Just to give like a big background for this is that cottage housing developments are pretty much small attached or detached single family dwelling units. They often base around common open space areas that are typically around 600 to 1,500 square feet with 1 to 1.5 stories with 1 or 2 bedrooms. These are mostly ideal for retirees or smaller households, where they enjoy more modest living instead of like these big single family homes. So they still enjoy amenities, the open space, and the main focus is creating a close-knit neighborhood. These can also help with opportunities in our missing communities. And right now we're seeing that our zoning restricts cottage housing. So that's why we're implementing a new bylaw to try to bypass this problem. So just to give a quick update of like where we're at with our demographics, as you can tell from 2000 to 2001, there has been some changes. Household sizes are going down. We're seeing family sizes going down or people having children. But then we also see an increase with elderly single people living on their own is increasing along with the size of homes and having the 8+ homes from 19% to 22%. So this is something that we're obviously there's a disconnect creating these bigger homes where people don't really need those types of bigger homes. So with Massachusetts in itself, we are like the rest of the United States, we're facing chronic and growing shortage of housing, along with associated high costs and inequalities in that. So with the demand and the types of location of housing are not meeting the needs of what residents are looking for, we need to start producing more diverse housing that is also more affordable. So, and plus size, it also helps with climate change. This can be implemented within single family home and subdivision areas. So it could be bridging not so much into high density, but also bridging into the lower density housing. Right now, we're going to review some case studies that we reviewed. So we reviewed Concord, Dennis, Langley, Harvard, Hamilton, and Stowe. We're going to look over what they did and then also just see some stuff that may have worked and may have been a little hardships that they've gone through. So to start off is Concord. They were built in 2011. These are pretty much bigger than what you normally have seen, but the main thing to notice is that they're keeping up with the neighborhood aspect that really celebrates the natural environment and the sense of community. You're seeing all the houses facing that open space area. These homes are 3-bedroom to 2-bedroom units. Sizes are 1340 to 1760. There is parking in these areas, and they have private centralized septic and public water. Moving on to Dennis, Massachusetts. This one you can see is more average, and this one's more popular. I'm pretty sure we've all heard of this one. It's called Heritage Sands. This is zoned as a seasonal resort community with sizes of 900 to 1350, and parking is decreased compared to Concord, which is 1 space per cottage. The main point of these, again, you can see them all facing that common open space, creating that walkability. Now, Langley, Washington is one of the places that we looked outside of Massachusetts. This is one of the places that were first implemented cottage housing back in 1998. These are probably going to be one of the smaller ones you've seen, with 650 square feet to lofts that were 200 square feet. These are usually 1-bedroom to loft units. Parking, again, is decreased. That's going to be another trend since the main focus is walkability and community. They're trying to step away from too many cars or the presence of cars. So parking is 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit. And you're going to see, again, the amenities is shared garden. There's a common building and then a tool shed. Harvard, Massachusetts has also set some. These, again, are bigger though. So these aren't really focusing on the smaller size, but they are focused on people and not really the vehicle. These sizes are about 2,000 to 2,200 square feet. Parking, they do have it attached, which is 2-car garage per unit. And their zoning is within the 40B comprehensive permitting. Now, these other case studies that we've seen was Hamilton. Unfortunately, Hamilton didn't get approval for their bylaw, but they did get, you saw that they went through complete details where their plan was to allow this type of zoning for gross floor area of 800 to 1,500 square feet with maximum bedrooms of 2 and parking spaces, 2 spaces per unit. Now, what kind of was a setback, it seemed that they really tried to involve the community and everything, but people were worried that it was going to bring downsize their area, which wasn't the idea at all. So voters did end up rejecting this. But this is something that we can learn from here, and hopefully we can move forward. Now, Stowe, Massachusetts is a little bit different. They, other than making it just a zoning district or just a bylaw to implement anywhere, they actually put it as an overlay within the active adult neighborhood. So it permits cottage housing development for diversity for the older adult residents who are planning to downsize. So again, these have max 2 bedrooms with 1,800 square feet gross area. Now, I haven't seen, when I looked into it, I haven't seen any development just yet in Stowe, but at least they have this implemented, so developers, if they do plan, can implement this later on.
Victoria,
Now-
what was the reason again that the problem with the one in Hamilton?
So Hamilton, they didn't have voters, so voter respondents denied it in fear that it was going to cause trouble with single family dwellings with the density of housing near them. So they were worried there was going to be too many homes by single family, making it more higher density areas.
Huh.
And again, it probably is just word of mouth that they weren't completely understanding exactly what the development was. So that's something that we should pay attention to and hopefully can make clear of it. When you can see what the bylaw and maybe some of the pictures that we seen on these other ones, that's not the point, not to make it too density like a multifamily unit. So moving forward with some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, with these strengths, we can, as mentioned before, this diversifies the housing stock. It can utilize, it's better efficient to utilize the land than single-family residential development. It could be an ideal area for urban infill development as well. It does permit for higher density. It also, the cost per unit can be lower than would have been for normal single-family homes. There's opportunities to invest in cost savings for higher quality amenities. It also reduces energy costs for homeowners. Now, moving on to some weaknesses is that there's potential conflicts with neighborhoods, aesthetics, and design standards. And you'll see in the bylaw that I did put in a design standards in there, just so because of this conflict right here, we all are on the same agreement and same understanding with the developer and the town and the community of what the standards would be for design. Now, it could be difficulty in meetings that needs larger growing households. These are mostly compact cottage housing sizes. These are limited on the market, and so there is uncertainty about the market acceptance of cottage housing. And then there can also be challenges in obtaining financing or investment due to these perceived risks. There could also be potential difficulties with permitting processes. And then also, of course, environmental concerns next to wet spaces or anything like that. And then the last one with the lack of long-term maintenance, that's also a risk, but that's something we can always put in the the bylaw for the HOA, which will be discussed later on as well. Some opportunities on here is providing denser housing, bridging that gap from missing middle. We're accommodating to smaller households, which means we are including singles, those with few children, or even downsizing seniors. We're making sure we're really fostering that neighborhood within a neighborhood, so creating that familiarity and safety. We're allowing implementation of single-family residential areas. This is enhanced in flexibility, adaptability, and potential for infill developments. And then again, these are for people who are seeking to downsize or for young households. Some threats can be from NIMBYisms, opinions, zoning and regulatory constraints, challenges in finding suitable land for these projects, infrastructure limitations such as lack of utility services or insufficient capacity to support increased housing. There's a higher initial investment cost, and then parking limitations can potentially put a strain, especially in our rural communities. But again, this can always be worked out on our bylaw. So we'll review the bylaw right now, and then I'll also email this PowerPoint for everyone in this presentation for the board, so you guys can also have access to it as well. But it should be emphasized that the cottage housing does not represent a completely new type of housing, but instead an alternate use of the land of existing underlying zoning that you have for your town. Some of the regulations for best practices that you can use is affordable restrictions, age restrictions, open space protection, design guidelines, or any other elements that you may find suitable. So other than that, before we get started on the bylaw, do we have any questions on the PowerPoint? No? All right, let me switch over.
Most of the projects had a limit to the total number of units that could be involved.
Yes. Most of
What's
them
the-
would have, compared to how much land there is, the bylaw that I created there that says that there can only be two units per what was allowed for a single family home on a lot. 2 units would be allowed instead. Why is it not showing? All right. And everyone can see the screen all right? Yeah, all right, perfect. Okay, so getting started. We have the purpose and intent, and again, this is just describing that this bylaw is to provide information about dimension standards, open space, parking requirements, and design guidelines. This is also going to be for in order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of residents of the cottage community, as well as the general public of the area. This is the quality of life in residential, and if you do have mixed-use zoning, we can add that as well. If you don't, we can just keep it as residential. Moving on, this just goes into more detail of what cottage housing developments are for and how this is going to be implemented within our housing strategy. And then again, talks about the design standards and implementing these developments, the reason for it, which is to create that intimate community. The primary focus is the pedestrian-friendly environment and minimizing the prominence of off-street parking as well. All right, so moving on to some procedures. For this application, the cottage community approval shall be in accordance with the procedures of approval, either a special permit and a special plan review, depending what type of procedure that you would like to do. This is something that you can decide for your town, if they should just be looking for a site plan, or if you would like the applicant to also apply with a special permit as well. The planning board shall act as an administrating authority for any of these procedures associated with this bylaw. Moving on into zoning district allowance. We recommend that the cottage housing development should be permitted in all residential zoning districts in order to allow this type of development and really bridge the gap between single and multifamily homes. However, like most parts of this bylaw, this is pretty much creating a foundation or an outline, and you can always customize this if you want it to be in specific zoning districts only, or just how Style did, where you just want it to be in the active adult overlay as well. Jumping back to that density part that we were talking about, because of the reduced size of the individual cottages, we're looking at 2 cottages are permitted for every 1 dwelling unit allowed per zoning district standard. So the density allowance can be changed so that towns can see what works best for the community. And suggested density bonus is to simplify, allowing up to 2 cottages in place of a single-family house that would otherwise be built on the site. The suggestion is where zoning is more dense and/or cottages are larger, this might be reduced to something like 1.7 cottages per house. With that, we're also going to be talking about cluster sizes. Because cottage housing is mostly about keeping a community in tight-knit, there's going to be clusters of them. So the minimum density would be 4 with a maximum of 12 units. What was that? Okay. So with that, the suggestion is to ensure that the developments still create that sense of community around, still facing that open space. If the cottages do end up being on the bigger side, let's say, for instance, the 12, the larger clusters can be broken up. So maybe 6 and 6, but still one big community, just with smaller clusters within that community. So going on to the dimensional standards. Again, this is something that is flexible and that we can always change that you see best fit for your area. So starting off with the floor area for cottages, we're thinking around 975 to 1,200 square feet. If you think this is too large, we can always go down to 600 as well. Just thought this was a good happy medium to start in the beginning. With that said, if they do decide to add that half story in there, the ground floor has to be a minimum of the 900 square feet, or sorry, max gross floor area of 900 square feet. Cottages allowed, units allowed would be the 2 per lot. And I missed on the top part where it says max gross floor area, and it has a little star right here. The first floor area of each cottage shall not exceed 900 square feet footprint, not inclusive of any porch or deck area. Where a second floor is included, the livable area of the second floor shall not exceed 50% of the ground floor area. All right, and then maximum height with a minimum roof slope of 6 by 12 is going to be 25 feet. And with the note down here, where included, the second floor area shall primarily be located under the pitched area of the roof as a half story, with the spring point of the eave starting no higher than 3 feet above the finished second floor, and with no more than 50% of the roof length interrupted by dormers. In no instance shall the first floor exterior walls exceed 14 feet in overall height. And then setbacks would have the front at 25 feet, side at 10, and rear at 15. Just to mention this, and then the next part, we'll also see minimum distance separating structures is 10 feet, meaning that side setbacks. We have seen that some towns have had concern because of fires. Usually there's certain standards that are greater than that. The reason why these are more compact is because of that closeness and allowing more dwelling units onto the land. But from what we've heard, and we're going to be reaching out to more developers, is that to kind of offset that is fire departments are allowing us to add mandatory fire sprinklers into the development. So again, we're going to keep looking more into it, and then other fire departments, ask them what their concerns are compared to where your town, if that would be applicable. If not, we can always change that separation inside setback. And then there's a third one, which is the planning board can also grant a special permit at its discretion, ensuring alignment with the bylaws intent when determining setbacks and building separations. Minimum private open space, it will be 200 square feet per dwelling. And then the common open space would be around 250 square feet to 780 square feet per dwelling. And then minimum parking spaces would be 1.5 spaces per dwelling. And just a few notes down here, we have cottage community may be developed with dwelling units on separate lots, a single lot, or a combination thereof. No detached accessory buildings shall be allowed except shared common structures such as storage sheds, garages, utility structures, or similar common facilities. Dwelling units shall have that minimum of 6 by 12 roof pitch. Portions of that roof with a pitch less than 6 by 12 shall be limited to architectural features such as dormers, porch roofs, and shed roofs. Accessory dwelling units are not allowed within the cottage community whatsoever. Before we move on, Is there any questions for this section? No? All right. Okay. So with our common open spaces, this is going to be the area where everyone shares this. That means that the first one is shall abut at least 50% of the cottage housing developments. Along with that, they should be at least two sides, abutting at least two sides of the common open space, the cottages. And then cottages shall be oriented around and have an entry facing that common open space. Cottages shall be within 60 feet walking distance of the required open spaces. And then no dimension of common open space area shall satisfy the minimum square footage requirement, shall be less than 20 feet in width unless it is part of the pathway or trail. The common open space shall be designed for passive or active recreational uses. These can be courtyards, landscape picnics or gardens, even including amenities like seating, landscaping, trails, gazebos, etc. The required common open spaces shall be maintained by the homeowners associations or other incorporated or private entity formed through ensuring long-term maintenance to those open spaces. Moving on to the private open space, the intent for this is to still create that personal privacy and ensure a component of a balance between the difference between the common open space and still their yard. So the front yard creates a transition from public to private, while the side and backyards offer that increased seclusion. So the semi-public transition zone and semi-public porch may be separated to the main entrance to the dwelling from the common open space or street. This transition zone should include some combination of fencing, planting, or railings. And the private open space may be located in the side or rear as well. The size of these shall be with a minimum of 200 square feet of usable private open space with no dimensions less than 10 feet. Each open space requirement may be met with a combination of front, side, or rear locations. And now we're going to go to the fun stuff, the design of these cottage homes. Again, what the intent is to really reflect a coherent and high quality design concept that includes architectural elements that ensures that compatibility with the existing neighborhood or community character surrounding the proposed development. And then these are also to provide compatibility with the residential elements. I reread that. And then this would also be submitted to the planning board for review and approval. And so moving on with the architectural designs, these ones are mandatory. These were going to be needed. So starting off with the same combination of building elements, features, and treatments shall not be repeated on individual dwelling units for more than 1/3 of the total dwelling units in the cottage community development. Dwelling units with the same combination or features and treatment shall not be located adjacent to each other. And so the following design features required would be variation of general architectural elevations and size. Prominent wall materials shall be or have the appearance of wood, brick, or stone, and shall be made of paintable material and may be painted or coated in non-metallic finish. Vinyl sliding materials are prohibited unless such products have an appearance of natural wood. Moving on to this next part. Now, we're allowing them that they would need to pick at least a minimum of 5 of the following building elements, but they can do more if they like. They just have to have that minimum of 5. All right, so starting off, we have variations in building stories. So a mix of 1 and 1.5 story buildings, a variation in roof, building colors and or materials, varying roof shapes or gables, windows with visible trim or mullions, roof brackets, dormers, bay windows, entry enhancement, attached trillos elements over windows or patios, exterior chimney made of or clad in brick or stone, additional porches or patios, but this is not part of the required porch, decorative paint schemes, 3 or more colors, and then decorative shingle designs, and then any other building elements or designs or features that is approved by the planning board. We can always add, take away if you think are unnecessary on this part as well. Moving on to the porches, the cottage housing units shall have a covered porch of a primary entrance oriented towards that common space or the public street right away as applicable. The required front porch shall have a minimum of 60 feet in area with a minimum dimension of 6 feet and the maximum dimension of 10 feet of any side, except that a porch may exceed, but is not required to exceed the full length of the front facade. The porch may also wrap around that cottage for a maximum length of 20 feet on either side of the cottage. The fencing shall be no more than 36 inches in height. The fence material shall be or have the appearance of natural materials such as wood, brick, or stone, and shall be made of a paintable and may be painted or coated with a non-metallic finish. Chain link fences would not be allowed and is prohibited. Before moving on to parking, do we have any questions on the designs? No? Okay. So parking. So the intent with these, like we said, cottage housings are smaller compared to regular single family homes. So, and the goal is to create the walkability in communities. So parking is reduced for these average areas. And then also screened to make sure we're not making it all about the car, but more about the community and the people. And so this part right here in the beginning with the intent, it's talking about the parking lot landscape standards. This can always be added with whatever standards you may have in your landscaping zoning bylaw. Moving on, newly established on-street parking as part of the project can be included in the minimum parking criteria. Along with garages may be attached to individual cottages, provided all other design standards have been met and the footprint of the ground floor, including the garage, is included as part of the gross floor area calculations. Such garages shall be located away from the common open spaces and shall not gain access off the public street and shall have garage doors of 10 feet or less in width and can be architecturally subordinate to the cottage. Now with this, we can include it. We can completely take it out if we want it. We don't want garage as part of these developments at all and just screen parking. One of our town's main thing was they wanted this because if they did elderly or zoning for this, then this can allow them not to walk as far and have their cars parked closer. So again, with a minimum of 1.5 parking spaces with an additional 15% total required spaces for guests. Shared detached garages and surface parking shall be located, areas should be located so their visual presence is minimized and associated noise and impacts do not intrude in those public spaces. So starting off with the shared detached garages, the design of those structures must be similar to and compatible to the existing cottage dwelling units. Along with that, it cannot exceed more than 4 garage doors per building. And the roof and the design of these garages also shall be compatible with the existing cottage units. Surface parking areas cannot be located in clusters more than 4 spaces, and each of these clusters need to be separated by a distance of at least 20 feet. Parking lot shall be set back at least 20 feet from the property lines and 10 feet from the external side and rear property lines. And again, this is going to reference back to whatever bylaw regulations that you might have for the size of the spaces that you require. Garage doors shall not be facing towards any public right-of-way with the exception of any alley. Also screened from public streets and adjacent residential uses by landscaping or architectural screening. Moving on, we have the common area maintenance, which again is something that we talked about with the homeowners association. Now, these are going to be approvals for the maintenance of the common open spaces, parking, surface water management facilities, if applicable, and then any other common area or shared facility. And then we also just want to reiterate that ownership, use, and affordability. So the cottages are for residential use only and may not be operated as transient accommodations. We want to create that sense of ownership. and individual units and private open space shall be owned by each homeowner. We can always identify, because the main point of this is that we're straying away from these cottage communities becoming short-term rentals. And we want to make sure that we still create that home ownership for anyone who wants to be in these areas. But we had some towns suggest that we maybe talk about long-term rentals, because you can own it and have a family move in to rent it out, but as long as it's not within that short-term rental definition, they'll be okay. With that, and again, this could be something that if you want to include, you can, and something you can always take out, which is a minimum of 20% of the units shall be restricted for affordable housing. So this can always be put less or greater than, determining what your goal is for the development. And last but not least, we have the waivers. Of course, if there's any alternative designs that they would like and cannot fulfill, they're more than welcome to go through with the planning board to waive or alter specific provisions of this regulation. And the planning board can always approve or disapprove. So with that, I'll open up for any questions or comments.
Victoria, do you know what percentage of the projects that you looked at have affordable units, and then in those cases, what percentage of the total number of units are affordable? I mean, did they all require affordability?
Not all of them required affordability. I'm pretty sure Langley has a chunk of it, but I need to double check what percentage. I'll put a note into that.
Okay. And do you have any idea what the sale price of these units ended up being? Was it able to fall in a category that's sort of below what you'd normally expect for single family homes in the community?
But some of I need to check the most recent one, because when I looked on the page, they are a little higher. For right now, I think Dennis was the most recent one I saw, and since this one is for a seasonal resort, this one was a lot higher than normal housing would normally be. So I would need to, again, see what prices, but the goal is, I'm assuming since they are smaller with the housing market where it is, it could be around 400 to maybe 400,000 to around maybe even 600,000. But with Dennis, I was seeing around 550, I believe, or up to 600.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Dennis is unusual in that it was seen as a second home, it sounded like, for a lot of the people that might have been utilizing those units, right? Was it primary residential units or secondary?
Again, that would be something I would have to double check. I know they were having trouble with their septic. And that's something I've looked into, which is that they recommend a cluster septic system, which they're implementing. And then also the best solution, which isn't really feasible right now for a lot of the towns, is implementing a treatment facility with municipal sewer lines. But the best way we can do is cluster septic, and that's what Dennis fell short on.
Wasn't the Dennis the one that was like 900 square feet or something? Because they were second homes, they weren't primary homes, is that right?
Yeah, 900 to 1350.
And those were $550,000.
Around there. But they also included amenities like 600 private beach, gated pool, clubhouse with the lounge and gym and all that.
Yeah.
So they had a lot more extra amenities. Most cottage developments' main point is the amenities being that common open space with maybe a bench or a community garden, stuff like that.
So how, this is kind of what we started with way back when, right? Which was put two houses on one lot, remember? With the in Ron's original suggestions. and we concluded that that really wasn't gonna drop the price enough to make it
Affordable.
affordable. How would we find out whether what's in this proposal, what it's really gonna cost to build it?
And so I'm actually, hopefully we can get a new DLT project approval for next year, because that will be the goal, is to set up a meeting with the towns and developers that have already gone through this. And so we can like ask those types of questions on pricing and their what was the hardship, what are the outcomes that they came out from those. Because a lot of the towns were asking those more detailed questions that I wasn't too sure about.
I think it's gonna vary considerably. It's gonna depend on the site and how much site costs are there. It's gonna depend on whether they, I mean, if you have plain Jane vinyl to look like wood siding versus, something that has some architectural elements, dormers, things like that, they're gonna drive the price up per square foot. So.
Well, and the cost of the land.
Exactly, right. Well, that's what I was saying, the development cost of the land. If it's a flat gravel pit, it's one thing. If it's a wooded with a lot of rock outcrops and you have, challenging septics and wells, then it's gonna drive the
Right,
price
but
up.
even the purchase price of the land.
Yes. Yep. So I
One
think,
of one of the things that, when I met earlier with Victoria and Emily and Jane, we talked about the possibility of their hosting a forum, and it sounds similar to what you're talking about here,
exactly.
Victoria, with,
Mhm.
maybe getting some additional DLTA funding that could allow for a forum that would bring in some of these developers and some of the communities that have actually had experience with these types of projects, to give us a little more insight into some of the successes and some of the failures that they've experienced.
it'd be interesting too, is if we could drag in some lenders that would be able to say, okay, what the heck, where does this pencil in and make sense? If they're developers are going to develop, they're going to get, financing from something. So if a lending institution or even private equity or something like that, they may have certain guidelines that they want to see too, before they'll be willing to cough up some money.
Mhm.
Yeah, good point.
We do have a hand up in the audience when you're ready.
Let's see, let's exhaust the questions from the board first, and anybody else that has anything. Mr. Andrews has been very quiet.
No, just listening. I understand the thing. As I've said in previous meetings, I'm concerned that in terms of affordable housing, the train has left the station on cottage housing, and these things are already more expensive than the people that we're concerned about can afford. But I was very interested to see your bylaw and the details in terms of architecture, and I thought that all looked pretty sound.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for doing so much of the work. There's definitely, I think, tweaks that we would probably make for it to make sense for us.
Yeah.
But
The foundation is there.
yeah, exactly. The footprint's there.
For sure.
Yeah, it's been our approach to look at overlays as the direction to go, and I think what town was it? Was it Stowe?
Yes.
Yeah, Stowe incorporated it as an overlay, and it might pay. We've thought about Stowe as a community that perhaps mirrors some of the direction we might be going in the next few years. They're a little larger, a little east of us. They might be experiencing growth and change that's foreshadows some of the experiences that we'll be encountering over the next few years. So looking at their project more closely and engaging with some of their folks might be interesting.
Yeah. Perfect. Make a note of that for us. And then anyone else from the board?
I like it.
Perfect. And
Has there,
then,
has there been any discussion with the schools in any of these towns that are considering adopting this?
I haven't heard anything with the schools, especially I think because cottage communities tend to aim more towards the elderly residents or more towards single adults, young adults coming into the workforce. But I can ask around if there was any concerns on a large increase on students going into the schools with these developments implemented in those areas.
Okay, so you weren't really, we were talking about three goals, which is seniors, workers, and starter homes, right? But you're really only
Exactly.
looking at seniors with this, right?
Well, it started homes as well. Now they can, since these we're looking, I would say more senior. It seems like a lot of the towns that we've been talking to are aiming more towards the senior living. But it is more of a starter home for those single adults or elderly.
Yeah, I think Stowe was the only one that had it as age restricted. All the others were open to any age.
Mhm.
So that would be an option as well if you wanted to do it as age restricted.
Right, but these are small. I mean, is there a bedroom restriction? I didn't notice that. It's just a square foot.
So
restriction.
bedroom restrictions are usually 1 to 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
And then even loft size too. Like you can see the one in Washington, I think they have lofts to 1 bedroom.
So it was only Devon's that jumped the number up to allowing the 3 bedrooms per unit in some instances, I guess, right?
Riverwalk.
Yeah, I also think
Yeah, the
Concord.
Harvard as
the Concord
well.
one, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay,
Harvard had 2 bedroom units, but their size of living was 2,000 to 2,200 square feet.
It would pay the board to go and take a ride through that. I
Right.
think you'd be surprised that it's not what we really want.
Mhm.
I mean, the language may be fine, but the result was not what I expected.
yeah, that's the way I feel,
The one in
What-
Harvard,
was it-
Yes,
right?
What was inconsistent, Tom?
they were like on top of one another. They were very large. And it just, it wouldn't be something that I would condone in our town. I'd be sort of unhappy if that's the result of the bylaw that we create. And maybe it was just because they were too large
Great.
for the
Mhm.
density. But
I
they felt like you were in a canyon walking through the places, and it was overwhelming.
It was Fred Flintstone when they're all talking with their neighbor, just like 2 inches away from
Very
the,
much so.
like, that's what I imagine. And I was like, okay, this is barely, they still had it as cottage. So I was like, let me show this, but they're a lot larger than what we want or what our goal is for these cottage developments.
Yes.
Yeah, the problem is that both workers and starter homes are presumably families, or could be families, right?
not necessarily, in what is a family these days? You know, it could be a single mom and a kid. It could be, or a single dad and a kid, you know, a single parent. It could be, you know, an individual who doesn't have children, who doesn't have a live-in partner, who doesn't want to live in a condo.
In Victoria, the number that you shared early on in your presentation that talked about families with children, I mean, it's a fairly small percentage.
So yeah, so we saw average households from 2000 was 2.55, and this is just in our county. And then 2021, it went down to 2.47, and then average family size in 2000 was 3.1, and it's dropping down to 3.03. And with percent households with children, it was 34.4%, with now it being 28%.
I mean, that's for Worcester County? Is that what that
Mhm.
figure's from?
Wow. That's surprising.
It'd be interesting to see what Eloise would tell us in regard to the percentage of households in Berlin that have kids now. I imagine we're, given the fact we're such an old community compared to the rest of the county, I would think we'd be in that under 30% number as well.
Yeah, and we're seeing like the shift everywhere that we're looking from, that we have the higher increase of the elderly households who probably have this big single family home and they don't want that anymore and want to downsize. And then you have the new working force, myself included. I would like to live in a cottage housing as like a next step because I don't see myself moving into a single family home on my own to care for. But that's just the demographic shift that we're seeing everywhere. Fewer children, if anything, they have a dog or cat. So just looking at those.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Hey, we did have an audience question. Is a hand still up?
Yep, we have two. I will take
Okay.
them in order of
Perfect.
raising. So Susanna,
Hello, thanks for letting me ask. My question has to do with the monthly maintenance fees or homeowners association fees, because in the past, we've seen that as being a deal breaker for affordability. And do we know on these completed projects what the maintenance fees, monthly fees are coming in as? If they were condos, they'd be condo association fees.
Yeah, I do not. That's actually a really good question to ask, and that's something I can call in. They can probably give me that fee and see what the average is for those. Because, and that it does kill for affordable housing, so that's something we can look into and how they implement that with affordable housing. Thank you,
Oh.
Suzanne.
Thank
right,
you.
that's been my concern about, having a common house. I like the idea of it, but there is the maintenance to
Mhm.
consider.
Yeah, and then I know for some, to cut those prices, they have restricted the amount of amenities that they use. And like how I mentioned, there's like community garden, and with that one, they actually have the community taking care of it, other than the HOA that still counts as an amenity, but it's not something that the HOA has to would charge to maintain. But I'll get on that one for sure. Thank you, Suzanne.
Next is Jim Royer.
How we doing?
Hey, Jim.
Good.
Hello.
I have 3 items. First one is on that table of dimensional requirements. It didn't make sense to me. One of the requirements there is that the first floor can be no more than a maximum of 900 square feet. But right above that, it says the total gross square floor area must be a minimum of 975 to a maximum of 1200. So essentially, there is no such thing as a 1-story unit here.
No, so for this one, because this one is for, the first one will be the total gross floor area per cottage, so the full amount. And then if they do add a, a second floor, then the minimum for that first floor alone is at 900. And then they can add on to the second, that half story, which would go towards that total gross floor area right there, which would bring it.
So that first line is not a minimum to maximum, it's a maximum of somewhere between 975 and 1200 is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay. Second item is, and this is to tag on to what Susanna just mentioned, a concern that I've had with the affordable housing with these HOAs is,
Oh, sorry, Jim. Sorry, Jim.
I'm back.
Yes,
You're
you
back.
are. I'm sorry. I was
Okay,
trying to
no problem.
lower your hand and I cut you off. I'll leave
No
it alone.
problem. As Susanna had mentioned with the HOA and the affordable housing, one of the concerns there again is I keep seeing this tendency of community members in these HOAs trying to drive out the low-income housing residents. So one of the things you run into when you build something like this is the HOA then votes to build a community center with a swimming pool, and it does a special assessment that the folks who are low income cannot afford. And that it essentially ends up driving them out of the entire complex. And then of course they can't sell it at the low income rate, and it ends up dropping out of the low income housing supply entirely eventually.
Mhm.
And the third item I have concerns water supply here. I noticed the Concord mentioned they had private septic and public water. The Harvard community listed private septic and water. The others didn't mention how they were obtaining sewer and water. We just ran into this on South Street when the development that was put in down there with 12 houses was built. We attempted to have them put in a single well to feed all 12 units. And the state declared that that would have to be treated as a public water supply. And that greatly increased the cost of building. So instead, they came up with a convoluted lot layout that allowed them to actually put in individual wells for each unit. So I'm not sure what the goal would be with these. I mean, with them being this close together, you would think they would have a common well, but I think the state's requirement that become a public water supply drives up the cost. As what we were told on the ZBA was that it would be multiple millions of dollars to put in that public water supply. And that was a kind of a deal breaker as far as doing it as a 40A project or a 40B project, excuse me.
Yeah, Jim, I might need to get your info and I want to read more about that because that is something I've been trying to get more information on is with the water. Especially in these rural communities, that's a very valid point right there. From a little bit what I've seen, there has been suggestions for individual wells. But again, like how that was the main concern was that they are so close together. So I'll ask developers around, but I want to read more on that law for the water, for that public water supply.
Yeah, I don't know I know that the developer submitted his plan to the state, and somebody at the state level determined that it had to be a public water supply.
How big were the homes, do you know?
Excuse me?
Do you know how big the development was going to be?
It's 12 units. I think they were, I want to say 4 of them were 2-bedroom and the remaining 8 were 3-bedroom.
And they're duplexes. Correct?
Excuse me?
Are they duplexes?
No, those are all standalone houses.
Those are
single
all
family.
Okay. I guess duplexes was one iteration.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yep. Do you know what the magic number is for a public water supply?
I thought they said 8 units.
Okay.
It goes by gallons per day. So it's going to be bedrooms.
Yeah. I'll look into
Yeah.
that. see
Right,
what
that's
I can
not
find.
totally true, Jay, because like for over 55s, we always get 66 units, because that's the magic number. Before other regulations kick in.
Hmm.
So,
Anyway, that's all I had.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Well, with that, I will send, Caroline, I believe I have, and Tim, I have your emails. I don't know if I have everyone else's, but I can send you guys the PowerPoint and the bylaw. And you can always write comments or anything like that might come up later, review it and send that back over to me. And then you guys can also forward it back to Jay or Tom, or if anyone else would like to have a copy of this as well, please email me. I can always put out my email as well. I don't see a comment box actually, never mind. How can, if you need my email, Caroline will have it.
yeah.
And with that, I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks a
Victoria.
lot.
Thank you.
Excellent. So that will, we can segue right into the next item on our agenda, which is the continuation of the discussion of the SWS housing and South Street, South Street.
River Road.
River Road West. Thank you. River Road West. West or east?
West.
West, right. Parcel. Are there proponents in the audience?
There certainly are. Mr.
I have a little bit
Rhodes.
of, I have a little bit of
and-
new data to show, by the way.
You have some new data to show us. Okay.
Well, kind of, because
Do you want to show that now, or do you want to?
why don't we just put it on the table and we can move on from it? Because, you know, it hadn't dawned on me as we were working through this that it could be an issue with school capacity. Right. I mean, if all we're going to make is very tiny houses and we're not going to have any kids, then it's not an issue. But I think we were talking about mixed
We were.
sizes and types and trying to get, I mean, starter homes, you would figure not everyone's going to be looking for a 1-bedroom, right? Why wouldn't starter homes apply to families too?
Right, but if you look at your the book that you sent around with, they promoted the fact that they had multiple amounts of bedrooms so that you can get a diversified neighborhood where you
Right.
have a mixture of starter, family, and elderly. Get a diversification.
That was kind of the premise I was working with, but I hadn't really thought about impact on the schools and what the school capacity is at right now.
Okay,
So it's trying to get some data. I think we really need someone from the school committee or the principal to come talk to us, which I couldn't get. You know, we wouldn't be able to get that till next month, I guess. So I was hunting for data among what was available. Eloise gave me some help, and I'll show you what the data that I got was here, if I can share my screen. It's kind of hard to piece the parts together and make them all fit. Is that readable?
yep,
So, yeah, I had been stuck in I guess the last time I looked at it was a couple years ago, and we were having a hard time filling out 2 classrooms and whatever the capacity of the school was. But it looks like all the different colored lines are the individual grade groupings,
right.
and the total is on the top. And I think this is only BMS and our kids in Tohoto. I'm pretty sure that's right. And I was wondering, because I think the state mandated cap for students per class is 25. You can see a bunch of these are over 25. But then I found this other information somewhere.
Well,
online.
per classroom. This data,
Classroom, yeah.
right, and this data doesn't necessarily indicate classroom.
Right,
This is grade level.
right. And so I started thinking maybe this is 2 classrooms per grade, right? And I found this other data online that said we were at 16.4 kids per class, which I think is classroom.
I believe
Which is
that's true.
Probably right. So that all data sort of fits together. So right now, if that's true, then we would have approximately 2 classrooms per grade. We would be at, 16, and we can go to 25. I think the average in the state is 22. So it would appear that there's room to add, say we had 25 or 30 houses. And I don't know, out of that, how many kids you get, maybe 20 kids or something. If it's mixed sizes, and it would
Okay,
appear there's room for them, but for us to conclude that based on the amount of work I've done so far would be a mistake. So I think we really
so
should.
if you had 21 kids and there's 7 grades, that's 3 per grade.
Yeah,
You do
Well.
straight math.
It would
Yeah.
be awfully convenient if they
Wouldn't
do
it?
that way.
well, the total is almost 400 kids, right? So you add 20, you're talking about 5%.
Okay,
Right, but the 200 apartments gave us, I think, 15 kids or 16 kids.
Good.
Mr. Wheeler, do you remember that number?
Yeah, it's in that range. So it's significantly lower than the projections that we developed when we were doing the
you projected
analysis.
28, right?
Yeah, 28 to 35, I think.
Yeah,
Those are not really kid-friendly units, right?
right.
I mean, what happens, let's say that we follow the pattern that we've followed for years, which is in Berlin, you see somewhere on average of 15 single-family A&R lots developed on an annual basis. So, and those are 2 and 3 bedroom, sometimes 4 bedroom units. I mean, I think Victoria's numbers suggested that, the size of houses that are being built is significantly greater. And so as a result, those homes, when you get a new subdivision, let's say with 5 or 6 units, and they're families that are consistent in age in a lot of cases. I mean, they're the groups that are moving from the cottage housing, if it existed, into a larger home where they can accommodate the 2 bedrooms they need for the kids that are growing up that are now school age. And so you get this bubble often that puts a number of kids into the 1st grade or into the kindergarten all at the same time. So they don't distribute evenly. That would be the ideal world, but it just doesn't happen that way. So you end up with these bubbles, and then as a result, the school is challenged because you might very well end up with a grade that then ripples through over the course of the 5 or 6 years they're in the elementary years, where that group is, 40, and all the groups on each side of it are back in the, the 25 to 30 range. So you're suddenly challenged with, okay, how do we keep the class size similar to what's happening throughout all the other grades? And, do we need to add a teacher? How do you do that if you don't have the extra classroom, that sort of thing? I mean, Berlin Memorial, I think, ended up sacrificing some of the extra classrooms that were there initially for some of the special purposes, as they needed to, fill those up with, classrooms. But it's not a easy science, It ends up, like I said earlier, you can end up with these fluctuations that throw everything out of whack. But we do know that family sizes are decreasing. There are a lot of young people that are not having kids at all. As Victoria said, you end up with a dog and a cat instead of a kid. And that's I would think it would be interesting to look at Eloise's numbers and see how many dwelling units in town don't have any kids at all.
Well, she has her hand up.
Yeah, she can tell us probably.
I can have that information for you in early February.
Okay,
Great.
Because the census will go out at the end of this month. And then hopefully I will get the bulk of them back before the end of January.
Is there any way we can do a look back like 5 years ago and then compare that to the number that you'll generate this February? Have you
Sure.
generated that number before?
Yeah.
'Cause
Yes.
that to see if our trend is similar to the one that Victoria talked about would be kind of interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, if they don't like the local school system, they'll school choice their kids out or private school them, or they'll hold them back a grade.
Or even homeschool. I mean, homeschooling is
Right.
certainly more popular now than I can ever remember.
Yeah.
The other thing that would be interesting to look at is that same demographic for Hudson and Marlborough. Because my kind of anecdotal observation is there are fewer native-born Americans that normally would be having children than they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. But the immigrant population, which is pretty big in those two towns anyways, they're having a lot of kids. A lot of three-child families, in fact, which is pretty rare among the legacy people. So I bet a bunch of them would love to move into Berlin over the years as they gain affluence and mobility and children.
and your point is?
Thank you.
I think it could be deceptive to think that there's not going to be a need for housing for young families with more than 1 or 2 bedrooms in Berlin. Maybe we don't need to address that. Maybe they'll be wealthy enough they can buy the single family homes that we already have here.
Right. And I don't think this bylaw is trying to address every possible housing issue that may happen in the town.
I think it's
This
gonna be
is just-
economics.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And this is just one, one demographic. Well, multiple demographics with the same bullet, as it were.
But if it's a 40B, HUD wants at least 3 bedrooms. They are looking for family housing.
Right. So, but it's not a 40B.
Correct.
Right now, while it's fictitious, I'll concede to you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's use this as our segue and let's have our other proponents talk to us about what progress they've made down in the overlay. Eloise, you have your hand up. You want to say something additional?
No, I was trying to lower it down.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to put Eloise back in the audience. And I'm going to lower her hand.
Excellent, thank you.
All right.
So I don't care, flip a coin, either Seth or Mark.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm okay. We
Excellent.
really haven't moved beyond our last discussion, other than I've done a fair amount of research as far as cost is concerned. and estimating road costs and water costs and so forth and so on. But we kind of wanted to sit back and find out what the results were from this meeting. And my view is the state is way off course from where Berlin is as far as the number of units per acre, the fact that we don't have the sewage, the fact that when they, not looking to put 4 units, we're not looking, you're not looking to put 200 units in, you're looking to do workforce housing, which covers 3 different bases, from the ranches to the splits to the duplexes to the 3 bedrooms, which we haven't gotten to that yet. But some of my work that I did with the cost of the road and the cost of the water and cost of everything in general is that the maximum units we can get in is 45 2-bedroom units, and that's the more units the better, as far as, because I'm coming up short with the amount of road and the water. I think the project is still valid, but there really can't be a fee for the water other than the water bill that goes to the units for the rest of time. If the water that we're buying needs a subsidy to max out their supply and help pay for that, that's valid. But the hookup fee, there's really not a lot of money there for the distance that everything has to run. I have some numbers from a subdivision that I proposed, and I didn't propose it. I ran some numbers on a subdivision of 40B in Ashby that had town water and sewer, and we had to run a way up the road and then into the subdivision, and I walked away from it. But this one has some merit, but it's still tight. It's still tight on the numbers. And like Carolyn was saying, with the clubhouse and other things, the fees won't be able to absorb that. So I think to make things, to stay in focus and make things work, need to tighten up a little bit of not a lot, but just a little bit of the density, as far as shortening a few of the roadways, and shortening the length of some of the water, but still staying to the same feel of the housing that you're looking to obtain in order to make that happen. So I'm going to take everything I heard from the woman from the state and just put that someplace else, because this is a whole different animal. It's a whole different project, and it's not, you're not looking to be, if that was a 40Y, if that's a 40Y, we can't do that. And the affordability component cannot exist, because that will just wipe out, we can't do it. But where Berlin already is at 17% back a few years ago when I did a study, I believe you have protection for approximately 500 homes before you breach your 10%. So how you want to spend those 500 homes is basically what you guys are here for. So tell you what I know, tell you what I've researched. I can probably trim a little bit off of some items as far as costs, but as well as I'm also conservative as far as the fact that costs are continually rising and interest is rising. So I was planning on getting in touch with my banker tomorrow to run my numbers through a spreadsheet and see what the rate would be for the interest. And obviously to make things work, the project would have to be phased. You put the road in, excuse me? Oh, sorry. It would have to be phased, as far as you put the road in from the main entrance, run the emergency access all the way through to Boundless Adventures, run your water in from Boundless Adventures, and work the closest side So it would need to be phased from a safety standpoint, a financial standpoint, and a building standpoint. So those are just all of the things that I guess I have done things since I talked to you last. But we don't have another plan from the last time we talked.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any board members have any comments or questions? Penetrating insights?
It's a little late for penetrating insights.
Pardon?
It's a little late
Oh,
for
okay.
penetrating insights.
Got it.
Well, there's a lot of trade-offs in here. Okay, so there's how many units? Are there affordable ones? Is there a mix? You know, can there be a mix of some more expensive homes that you can make more money on, along with some cheap ones that it's harder to make much profit on? And then the trade-offs of what kind of amenities and features do you add? And are there multifamilies in there, which are presumably cheaper to build and more profitable? It's a lot of
The multifamilies, for the most part, it's kind of a myth unless you get into quads and high rises. Because you have to build the firewall in between, which costs the same amount to build two separate walls. So the non-multifamily sell better and go for a little bit more money. But the trade-off could be done for more units, because we only have X amount of bedrooms. We got 90 bedrooms. So if you were to do some 1 bedrooms and do some 3 bedrooms, you could do some 1 bedrooms in the smaller units, which could be a retirement family or a single person with a cat or a dog. Like you guys heard that story, you know. And then you could have some 3 bedrooms that could be the larger families that would satisfy the HUD, which this isn't a HUD project, but you could have your mix of 1s, 2s, and 3s, still stay within your 90 bedrooms, and it would be multiple septic systems on the public water that comes from Boundless, the direction of Boundless Adventures. So something like that could yield a little bit, could yield some more money to make it more attractive, but running the spreadsheet with my bank will really tell what, because the rates we're paying right now are 11%.
Yeah, those are pencil.
So that's why phasing and phasing has to happen. But every subdivision I've done in town, I've worked with you guys and pave a certain amount, do a certain amount. And here we would have the public water, and I've factored in a couple of cisterns for the fire department, because the public water, I don't believe can, and I figured in sprinklers, but the public water can't fill a hydrant fast enough to pump out of. But if you have a holding tank, and it might even work to have one centralized holding tank that the public water pumps into. And actually we have 2,700 feet of roadway. Berlin can lay hose in any direction, 2,000 feet in a matter of minutes. So if there was a centralized cistern that was filled by the public water supply, the minute they start pumping out of that, they could satisfy the fire needs for the whole place. Because we've done that with a 1-inch line, and that increases the potential for water by a huge amount. So if you tied that into the main, then that would definitely help with fire.
Brook Lane has that.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Yep.
How do you
Yeah,
keep
they
it
have a
from
tank.
freezing?
Hmm?
How do you keep it from freezing?
It's
Oh, is it
below grade.
underground?
It's underground.
It's
Yeah,
underground.
below grade. Yeah.
And they have a
And then the
Siamese hookup for it.
yeah
Or
the suction
Siamese
pump,
whatever.
the suction
Yeah.
pump. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Suction line. Yeah.
It's right across from the clubhouse. So it's central to the facility. So is there any merit to the idea of if you had, I don't know, pick a number, 5 or 6 full-scale, larger 3,000, 3,500 square foot houses that were punked at the edges, would that, the amounts that you could sell those for offset anything that, or is that just the wishful thinking?
Yeah, I think you're better off to go with some 3-bedroom 1,700 or 1,500 square foot homes. Yeah. Because the larger homes, they have your square footage per foot for the home goes down, but your price that you can sell them for goes down, goes down as well.
Right. Okay.
You still have the same amount of bedrooms, you still have the same amount of doors, you still have the same furnace, you still have every component. So unless you jump to bigger than that on a single family lot is the only market for the larger homes.
Okay.
Yeah. I could research if you pulled some A&Rs off, but then it will destroy the berm. And that's the whole thing that the abutters likes.
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
lightning rod at this point.
Yeah, I don't think that's the way to go either. I just wanted to let you know that would be the only way to do
We were
that.
just, we were throwing some ideas around and we didn't know whether that would be enough seed money to be able to, give you give the project some other latitude, some of the areas.
In some areas, I think that would work, but in this particular place where you're trying to maintain that
Right.
berm, yeah. As much as that berm is full of nice material, I'd have to, say that, no, it's not the best idea.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else have anything they want to say? Is there any audience members that have comments or questions or? No,
No hands up.
no hands up. Okay. All righty. Well,
Where do you
thank
think
you,
we should
Mark.
go? Where do you think we should go from here?
Good question.
Hmm.
Well, we got the language that was presented to us tonight. And we're gonna have to chew through that, right? And I think we're going to continue to work it if you get some interesting stuff from when you meet with your bank. I mean, if they come back and say, oh, you can't do it because of X, Y, or Z, or you can do it because of this, that, and the other thing, or whatever.
Sure, sure.
That might inform us a little bit more too. But I
Yeah.
think continue to work it. Our goal is to have something prepared for, language for the warrant.
Okay.
Right.
I'll
So
go ahead.
Speaking for
Just to-
everybody else, this is my thoughts.
right, just to be clear, the bylaw would be that whatever we do for the bylaw is how this project would get built.
Correct.
Correct. It's gotta be an overlay.
Right, Mark, you said something early, a little while ago that made me think that we weren't necessarily all on the same page about that. So I just wanted to make sure that we are.
Yeah, no, the bylaw would have to be voted in and then the property would have to be zoned with the overlay for the project to be built, and then the project would have to come back for final approval to the planning board for its approval.
Right,
So
for site plan.
Yeah, it's for site plan. So for all that to happen, I would have to stay in touch with you guys through this process, and while you hone the bylaw, then the second part of it would be the property would need to be overlaid with it after the vote that the bylaw was approved.
Right.
Right.
And in order for me to be sane and move forward, I would have to be in touch with you guys with a concept plan throughout the process. That it would be something that you would approve after the overlay and after the approval of the
The
bylaw
bylaw
and
and
the
the,
overlay,
yeah,
and then the
No
approval.
different than when we did the over 55s.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, I just, yeah, like I said, I just wanted to clarify.
yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. After listening to the state, I'm like, I'm out, forget it, ain't no way.
Well, that, I think that's actually what I am talking about, so, so she was actually from Central Mass Regional Planning, and
Yeah.
she's helping us craft the bylaw.
Yeah,
But she's doing it for multiple towns.
correct.
Right.
So then we can cherry pick what we want from it, or we can not
No,
do anything with it or adopt it all. So,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's given us a jump start instead of trying to make something or craft something from scratch.
Right.
No, it's a huge aid. It's a huge aid for you to pick what you want and delete what you want.
Yep.
And it's a step ahead of everything.
Right.
Yep. Okay. Just like I said, just making sure.
Okay, thank you.
Making sure I understood also.
All right. So
Awesome.
you guys continue on your end, I'll continue on my end, and hopefully we can reach a common denominator and get
Right.
the goal that everybody's trying to reach.
Yep.
Right, excellent, yep.
Thank you.
So.
I think
we-
somehow we, the board, need to learn more about cost, and cost elements. Because there's just a lot of variables in this whole thing. And to be just kind of taking shots at, well, let's try this, how much will that cost? Or let's try that, how much will that cost? I think we need to know. We need to know more about the pieces and be able to, kind of steer towards something that makes sense instead of just taking shots at it.
Everything it costs more. Is but the road costs and the infrastructure costs basically are cutting the majority of development out of this doesn't happen. So where this is a friendly site that's a gravel pit, it has the ability to actually for it to happen. But I've looked at several sites for subdivisions that are approved that will never be built. There was one in Leominster where they had all E1 pumps going up the hill. I may have told you this before, all E1 pumps going up the hill, and all the water was, they had town water, but then the water was expensive to run down the hill, and all the detentions basins were at the bottom of the hill, and the site was sloped from one side to the other. So you had to clear the road and prep all the lots at the same entire time. So all the infrastructure had to happen, water, sewer, and lots. And I priced out the infrastructure for the lots, and it was $350,000 a lot in Leominster without giving any money to the landowner, the engineer, or anybody. So it was unpalatable. And there's another one in Marlboro that I met with a landowner, and Marlboro has, you can only go an X amount of feet, or you can do a cluster. And that one with all of their infrastructure that they require, and it would have been a perfect place for wells and septics, but they don't allow it. Would have been a perfect place to have a bunch of large lots and open space, but they don't allow it. So therefore it couldn't happen. If sewer goes by the road, you have to put sewer in your road, you have to have the water, you have to run that all in. And to be honest, the cheapest way to do this place is with the wells. But I know you guys don't want that, so I'm steering towards the public water, and as a result of that, the unit count needs to go up. And it's hard to realize that the cost of pipe and fittings is greater than the cost of a $10,000 well. It's insane. It's a schedule, like even for septics, a Schedule 40 4-inch footing, a T is $20. Used to be $3. a piece of pipe is, what, $20? No, it used to be $20. Now it's almost $200. It's the numbers just make you sick. I went and bought some 3/4 inch conduit that I could carry over my shoulder, 10 pieces, and it was $175. Plastic is just insane, and plastic is, because steel is so much money, plastic is, they're gouging, because if you can't get the steel because of the shortage, you have to buy the plastic, so steel costs the same money as plastic. It's just the inflation is, every time I go to Lowe's, I got one little bag and they're like, oh, that's $100. I go, yeah, that's fantastic. Basically, building supplies are like groceries. It's where we're at right now. Doesn't make anybody happy. I'm sorry, I just had to say that.
I understand.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of which, this will be our last meeting in December, so we will have to, our next meeting will be in January to pick this up.
Okay.
All right?
You got it. Merry Christmas as well.
All right.
All right. See
Thank
you
you,
guys.
Mark.
Thanks for your time. We'll see you.
Good night.
All
Night.
right. Bye.
All righty. That's everything on the agenda. Is there any other things people want to discuss or talk about?
You're
Tim, you're
muted, Tim.
muted.
I'm waving my hand to be recognized.
You are recognized.
Matt Bader. A note this morning, he's been in contact with the receiver. They're still engaged and supportive, but also incredibly methodical. Because of this, I'm not sure we can hit a May town meeting deadline. Additionally, I am fairly confident that we'd not be able to finalize language by mid-February. He's going to continue to press forward, but it would appear right now that we probably, with Solomon Pond, would be looking at a discussion over the summer that would lead to maybe a town meeting article for the fall. And I think we've all got to make a concerted effort to make sure that there's a town meeting on a biannual basis now. I mean, this notion of waiting a whole year before you get another town meeting is antiquated, I think. When there's too much going on. So I think we need to just push the select board and the town administrator to accept the fact that the town ought to have 2 town meetings a year.
Okay.
Make life so much easier for all of us. I think if we could anticipate that, you wouldn't be trying to squeeze something in at the last minute,
Right, and it would make the annual town meeting a little less of a heavy pull
Right,
because people don't know if something's gonna happen in the fall.
right.
Surprisingly, our town clerk has her hand up.
Yeah, I know what she's going to say.
Speak for yourself, Tim. And be careful next fall because you've got your state primary. And I think that's September 3. And then the
Oh, okay.
mother of all elections will be in November 8th, I believe.
Well,
Yep. You'll be
maybe
taking your armored car back and forth to your house to the town offices.
No,
think
I might jump in front of the car.
my initial proposal was to have 3 town meetings a year, Eloise. So I think you ought to be satisfied that we're jumping back to just 2.
Well, then maybe you should plan one for early December. That's
you go.
after the November elections.
I like that.
Okay. Or late August.
Yeah.
Late
Anyway.
August would be a heavy pull.
Mhm.
So that's what Matt is saying anyway.
Okay.
So that
Take
helps
something
us
off of our
plan a
plate.
little bit, yeah.
Exactly.
So that means we're not gonna get our pickleball courts this year before summer?
Not this year.
No. not
No,
this year.
but you can go to the store and buy some pickles.
Yeah. Or you can go to Natick.
Yeah,
I can go to
Not just
Weston, where they're
yet.
putting in an $8 million facility outdoors.
wow.
Outdoors? Wow.
Really? Where?
It does amaze me because, things that are currently the latest rapidly become last year's news, and it's amazing the amount.
Yeah, like
these things
computers.
bring up.
The guy I worked for used to tell me the computers were a fad. He just kept telling me that over and over, and he was right. Look, we don't have computers anymore.
No,
Yeah, right. Well,
Now we
like
have
but
iPhones.
racquetball, remember racquetball was the thing?
Was it? Yeah, it
Sure.
was. Yeah, you're right. You're
yeah,
right.
yeah.
And
Yeah, that's what-
everybody,
It's
Yeah.
it's yeah. I didn't suggest it's a universal rule, but I have seen it.
Seems the way.
Right. right.
Seems
Not
the
that
way.
racquetball
could be.
totally went away, but it's not what everybody's doing.
But it's anything. Look at what they've done for lab space. They overbuilt that, and they overbuilt hotels, and they overbuilt it's
Yep.
everything cyclical.
Well, and I haven't sent you all the stuff I've been reading about multifamilies, but that's going to get pretty ugly, I think.
About how
Depends on where it
overbuilt
is.
Because
Depends on where it is.
we're absorbing 60,000 units a quarter, and there's 1 million units coming online in the next year or two.
Across the country. I agree with that, but there's not enough space. There's not enough of them in Boston
Right.
Think
and
so?
surrounding areas.
Huh.
Nope. They're telling the developers to build them bigger.
No, but there may not be right now, but there's 1 million
Oh,
more
I agree.
coming. That's the thing.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
takes
yeah.
years for them to come online, right? So there's this big lag. There's a
Yeah.
shortage.
I
Everybody
tell
gets
you,
started.
and the brakes are gonna come, if the interest rates come down just a slight bit and some of these pencil back in, right now they don't pencil in, but if they pencil back in, when the state foolishly adopts this new stretch energy code in the end of January, and the price of these things go up by 25%, they're not gonna be able to build them because they're not gonna afford them again.
Yeah.
Right.
Everything you have to have triple pane and it has to have redundancy and have to be 100% electric and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't work,
Is that for the whole
Yep.
state or just for Boston or something?
huh?
That's for the whole state?
That state's gonna adopt it, but Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, they're pushing the charge. And they're making all these developers, you can't put in gas, you can't do any of the,
Yeah.
that hookups anymore.
We're gonna get burned on
But
that
the
one.
state's gonna adopt it, and the unfortunate part is that they don't have the backbone of what they want isn't crystal clear yet. So there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of guys that are becoming consultants so that they can help these developers figure out what's going on. No, I'm serious. And
Yeah.
and what the state is saying is we're gonna put this, this is a quote, we're gonna put this out into the wild and see where it goes, and maybe we'll revisit this in 6 months. That's the dumbest thing in the world.
That's the
Sure,
Chernobyl
especially-
approach. Turn off all of the controls and
And see what
crank it up
happens.
and see what happens.
Exactly, and then we'll
Yeah.
react to
Well,
it later.
right.
It's like,
Well,
oh my God,
especially
that's the
because some of
dumbest
it's
thing in the
so-
world.
Some of it's so easy to predict.
Yeah.
I want to buy my own electric company.
Yeah. Well, I
Just-
mean, if all of those things go electric,
yeah,
I can already see my lights dimming.
Exactly.
just solar. Get rid of those horses and put up solar. You don't need all those horses anyway.
I put up solar with a lot of promises of how much money I was going to make on it, and it hasn't materialized.
It's shocking.
Maybe you need to put the horses on a cross trainer that generates electricity.
There you go.
I'm planning on retiring by selling my manure pile. Because
Oh, there you go.
it's going to be really valuable stuff. Same with Tim,
All
right?
right.
Full of weeds. I don't want any part of it.
No, it's all when it ferments, it gets so hot it burns up all the
Horse,
weeds.
horse manure is horse manure. Talk to me about cow manure, but I have one other topic.
Yes, sir.
I've been in touch with Jane and Trish at Central Mass about a DLTA project that would be a zoning diagnostic, and they suggested that we think about going forward with it. They did one for the zoning diagnostic and a rewrite for West Brookfield, and they had other state funding for the project. We were finishing a zoning diagnostic for Holden and maybe working on a zoning rewrite for them with a one-stop support to fund it. And as part of master plan process, we complete a review of zoning and subdivision regulations and then provide input. So what they're saying is we could apply for the DLTA funding. They'd come in and do the zoning diagnostic, which would identify holes and flaws and inconsistencies. And then we'd go and look for additional funding, either through the one-stop program or there's a couple other options that are out there, and they'd help us with that. And then they'd work with us on the rewrite.
Okay.
So if you're interested, I'll continue to pursue that. We can put
Yes,
an
please.
application together and get it submitted to them. They'll open up DLTA funding requests probably maybe even before we meet again. So if you want to appoint a small subcommittee and approve the notion that we'd apply, it'd be no cost to us.
I think we should.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah. Even
We're
if-
not going to get it done ourselves, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And even if we, we're going for some additional money for the master planning and stuff like that. And if we could dovetail that into this, then even if we don't get the DLTA money, we could still probably do a portion of it or part of it, at least have the review done.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that we'd get the backing for the DLTA.
Yeah. You want to make a motion and put a vote together, or?
Yeah, I move that we offer a application for DLTA funding for a zoning diagnostic to be completed in the first half of 2024. Then we might very well be able to work on something that would allow us even to pop in with an article or so in the fall to update some of the zoning, you know.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a proposal and a second. Is there any other discussion?
You want to authorize that you and I work on the submission? It's a fairly straightforward application. It's just a couple pages, so.
You and me?
Yeah, does that
Sure.
make sense? Then we don't have, I mean, we're not gonna have another committee meeting, so
That's fine.
I can draft something up and give it to you. I'll base it on what other people have done from other towns.
Okay.
I
Alright.
will second the amended motion that includes the authorization for Tim and Tom to work on the application.
Okay, see more further discussion? No, seeing none, I'll ask you to vote. Jay Teach,
Aye.
Carolyn McDonald.
Aye.
Thomas Andrew,
Aye.
Timothy Wheeler,
I
and Tom Sanford, aye. Motion carries unanimously.
And
Excellent.
I just like to send my condolences to everybody that so many of you have to travel out of the country for the holidays. It's unfortunate that, you know, you can't be able to stay home and relax.
I get mine out of the way
It's a tough life.
early.
Yeah,
Yeah, Jay
Yeah.
got back from Iceland, so he's accomplished his travel. Thomas, where are you going?
Now I went to South Carolina for Thanksgiving, and
There you go.
I'm around here for Christmas. Yes, I want to wish happy holiday and safe travels to everybody.
thank you.
Thank you.
So Sicily?
Yes.
That's a
We
cool
leave-
place.
Yeah, we leave Sunday, 2 days in Rome, a day in Naples, and then the rest of the time in Sicily.
That's
Nice.
great.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
Costa Rica?
Costa Rica.
Nice. Where?
We're traveling all over. So, most of it's gonna be on the west coast, but. we're
Yep.
gonna be into the mountains and coffee plantation and So it's the only time that both the girls' schedules match up.
Great.
So,
Well, have a
Glenn
good
and I
time.
did Costa
did.
Rica a couple of years ago, and my
Yeah.
favorite was La Fortuna.
La Fortuna, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We traveled all around as well, and
Yep.
um,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna be in La Fortuna.
are you?
Yeah.
I'm going to email you the name of a nature preserve.
Okay, yeah, please.
From the street, it looks like every other kitschy, cheesy place,
Yeah,
and it was the most amazing experience.
oh, cool, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
please do,
Yeah, it was awesome.
yeah.
The
Yeah,
waterfall and saw a
Yep.
toucan at the waterfall, and
Wow.
yep.
Yeah, we're looking forward.
I'm planning on going to Clinton. So
I'm sorry.
I'll
I'm
send
sorry.
I'll send postcards.
Yeah, send
If
us
somebody has a
postcards of
recommendation
the
or something to
signs.
see.
Send us
Of the
postcards of the
signs,
signs,
that's
yeah.
All right. Wait, let's close this meeting so that Brittany doesn't have to listen to our travel plans.
I move that we adjourn.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and it's non-discussable, so I will ask you to vote. Jay Teach,
Aye.
Carolyn McDonald,
aye.
Thomas Andrew,
Aye.
Timothy Wheeler,
Aye.
and Tom Sanford, aye. Motion carries unanimously. We're adjourned.
All right.